Hello everyone, and welcome. Welcome to the Migration Summit 2022, organized by the MIT Refugee Action Hub, REACT, NAMAL, Quran Foundation, Paper Airplanes, and the MIT Abdul Latif Jameel World Education Lab. This is a month-long global convening designed to build bridges between diverse communities of displaced learners, universities, companies, NGOs, social enterprises, foundations, philanthropists, researchers, and policymakers around key challenges and opportunities for refugee and displaced communities. This year, we are exploring the theme of education and workforce development and displacement through virtual events hosted by participating partners around the world. Today, we're excited for this design session with University of Geneva InZone on community resilience. I'd love to introduce our two facilitators today, Emma Sebastiani, a scientific collaborator at InZone, a program at the University of Geneva, pioneering innovative approaches to higher education in communities affected by conflict and humanitarian crisis. She holds a master's degree in conference interpreting from the University of Geneva and is responsible for InZone's English and French language programming. As a practicing conference interpreter, Emma is one of the co-authors of the Rapid Response Module for Humanitarian Interpreting and is currently involved in developing training resources for humanitarian interpreters in refugee settings. Lou Pisani manages the InZone programs, local teams, and actions on the field. He has a master's in history from the University of Geneva. He acquired his skills in designing and coordinating continuous learning programs over 20 years, working for international organizations in Europe and Canada. So pleased to welcome you, Emma and Lou.
Good morning, everyone. Thank you, Lana, for the introduction.
It's a pleasure to be here.
So first of all, thank you for joining us. On behalf of the University of Geneva and of InZone, a warm welcome to this session on community resilience. My name is Emma. I am the coordinator of the Resilience Project, and joining us today are our teams from Geneva, from Azraq camp in Jordan, and most importantly, some of the authors of the online course on resilience, which we will present today. So today's session has a twofold aim. First of all, we would like to present the standalone 1-hour module on the topic of resilience developed by the University of Geneva InZone in collaboration with a group of learning designers based in Azraq camp, Jordan. And then in the second part of the session, we would like to engage you in a short workshop to help us find new creative solutions to improve the co-design process. That is to say, to improve the way we work with refugees in co-designing and co-creating online learning material. So we're excited to have you here today. I'm going to start sharing my screen. Please let me know if you can see it. Excellent. So this is us. InZone is a University of Geneva program focusing on higher education for refugees in camps. We currently work in Kakuma camp in Kenya and Azraq camp in Jordan. This is going to be our agenda for today, the presentation of the online course first. Then we're going to have a Q&A session with some of the authors of the course, and then we'll delve straight into the workshop. The task for you will be to answer the question, how can we improve co-production of knowledge and online learning tools? First of all, though, I would like to share with you a quick video of Azraq camp filmed by our operational partner on the ground, CARE Jordan, which I hope will give you an idea of how vibrant community life is in Azraq. Obviously, this is a snapshot of 2022. To the right-hand side, you will be able to see a few figures about our learning community in Azraq in 2021. Just give me a second to share the audio with you.
العب ما صار والله صبت والله صبت يلا نلعب ما صبت هالحد ما صبت.
This is InZone's Learning Center in Azraq.
يعني كل فترة فيها أنت تخصصك الجامعي، شو دراستك، شو عندك إنجازات، شو عندك مهارات، شو عندك مثلا شهادات أنت أنجزتي، شو اشتغلتي، شو عندك خبرات عمل.
يعطيكم العافيه، انا عبد الله سليم من فريق انزون بالمخيم هون بالازرق. تمام. هسا بالنسبه
This is Abdallah, the director of our learning center.
18 سنه معك الا لا نهايه يعني غير محدود، يعني 70 و 80 سنه بيقدر يستفيد من المركز عندنا هون. احنا بنعطي دورات اكاديميه على منصات عالميه مثل كورسيرا واريزونا فيوتشر ليرن الى ما شابه الامور هاي. تمام. دوراتنا راح تكون باختصاصات عده، اختصاصات اكاديميه مثل في عندنا دورات طبيه التسجيليه دورات. تمام، هون الرقم الشخصي.
So I hope you've enjoyed that. Now let's move on to the actual resilience project. I'm going to share with you a quick presentation of the course to give you an idea of what it is all about, and then we're going to hear directly from the authors. Good morning and welcome. My name is Emma. I am the Resilience Project Coordinator, and it is my pleasure today to walk you through the online module on resilience. The project started in 2019 with a group of Syrian residents in Azraq camp who signed up for an introduction course to learning design. The group has worked for almost 3 years on this project, and we are delighted to be able to show it to you today. First of all, you will have to go to our official website, InZone University of Geneva. This is the main page. You will then have to click on what we do and learning. The Resilience Project is the very first at the top. You click on this link and here we are. This is the online course. It will take you about 1 hour to take the course, including the interactive elements. Like I said, it is a capstone project. It was designed with the purpose of helping refugee communities to tap into individual and community resources to find a way to cope when life becomes unpredictable. But the course also addresses anyone who's interested in the topic, in understanding what resilience is and how it can be developed. So let's jump straight in. Let's begin with the introduction. First of all, this module is available in English, and soon it will be available on our website in Arabic with voice-over narration. The voice talents are the authors themselves for the Arabic version and are key collaborators in Azraq for the English version. If you scroll down, you'll see a picture of Azraq camp and the team. Some of us will be with you today. Some of the authors will be joining this event. Some others, unfortunately, would not be able to be present. But here is an overview of the authors group, including, of course, collaborators. Then we move quickly on to the objectives. And the first chapter is all about resilience, with a definition of resilience. The authors have considered a few definitions given by key international organizations working in this space, including the International Federation of the Red Cross, the United Nations International Strategy for Disaster Reduction, and so on and so forth. Obviously, the authors are giving us their own definition of resilience. The course includes interactive elements such as quiz questions and later on case studies. I'll show you in a minute what they look like. In order to really understand what resilience means, at least from a theoretical point of view, the authors have examined the main frameworks out there developed by international organizations and academic actors to really understand and describe what resilience mean for the community and the individual. You'll see them listed here. There is quite a lot to go through, so we're gonna scroll a little bit quicker. What's interesting to note is that after examining the major frameworks, the authors have shared with us, with the audience, their own specific framework, which they've worked on during several workshops carried out in Azraq camp, and that's an interesting perspective that was lacking in this space. And that's also their original contribution to the field. It is at the very end of this theoretical section. There it is. The following chapter is all about community resilience. So we move from an individual perspective on resilience to a community one. What does community resilience actually mean? As you can see, the analysis is pretty detailed. There is also an overview of the gender approach to resilience. The authors have delved into gender norms and social change, and what resilience means for the most vulnerable groups in society. This is one example of a case study that the group of authors came up to have a closer look at what resilience means in this case. The next chapter focuses on community resilience in a refugee camp, and specifically on the role of international organizations, international NGOs and NGOs, local authorities and education providers in strengthening resilience. These are some of the actors present in Azraq camp in 2020. Interestingly, the authors are giving us a snapshot of the camp in 2020 with an interesting analysis of the strengths and weaknesses with respect to resilience building. Interestingly, the course includes video testimonials from residents of the camp interviewed by the group of authors. You will see a video contribution shortly. There it is, about the role of international organizations. Finally, we move on to the final chapter, which focuses on building a resilient environment. This can apply to a fragile setting, like a refugee camp, but also to other contexts. The authors really try to map out pathways to build resilience in one's life. The idea is to provide the audience with a toolkit to identify the elements that can foster individual and community resilience in their own very context. And finally, the conclusion. As I'm sure the authors themselves will be able to tell you directly, the purpose was clear in their mind when they sat down to create this course. They have also added a list of interesting resources in Arabic and in English. This is a snapshot of the group at work in InZone's Learning Center in Azraq camp in 2020. And this is the team behind it all. We're very proud of them. If you want to know more about this course and about other higher education opportunities provided by InZone, please click on this link, which will bring you back to our website. Thank you very much for your attention, and I look forward to the upcoming conversation. Thank you. Thank you very much for your patience. The volume was a little bit low. I hope you were able to make something out of it. I do apologize for that. Now, I have the pleasure of introducing some of the authors of this course. We have gathered their video testimonials, knowing that perhaps for connectivity reasons, they may not be able to join us today. I can see that some of them have, so it's going to be a pleasure to hear from them directly. But first, let me share this with you.
Hello, I am Coca Belmousa. I am one of authors of Resilience course. Millions of people in the world are facing where starvation or forest displacement. Most of us, sooner or later, have to deal with the bereavement, living with a disability, losing friends, the city or country that we love. Although we can't avoid physical and psychological suffering, we can strengthen our ability to face distress. We created this module to help you better understand what resilience is, and to provide insights into finding ways to cope with difficult circumstances in life. We are a group of Syrian refugees living in Azraq camp. We created this course to help refugee communities around the world make the most of individual and community resources to cope when life becomes unpredictable. This is not all. This module is also for anyone who is interested in understanding what resilience is and how it can be developed. Creating the course, we have been inspired by our experience of building our country and rebuilding our lives elsewhere. We hope that you will benefit for it as much as we have enjoyed creating it.
That was Kaukab. Now, this is going to be another contribution from Mutassim.
Hi, our course has 4 main sections. First, we explain what resilience means in a refugee context. Next, we look at theory frameworks that have been developed to understand resilience and social emotional learning. None of these, however, stem from the experience of refugee living in a camp setting. So we present our own framework our take on how resilience can be conceptualized and conveyed. This is our original contribution in the field. In general, resilience means different things to different people. The journey remains deeply personal. Yet, we all agree that a resilient community is made up of countless unequal pathways to mental strength. The total is bigger than the sum of its parts. The second part of the course, transition from individual to community resilience. How do they differ? To understand this, we look at vulnerable groups and case studies. We focus on the elements that can support or hinder community resilience. Let's take, for example, Azraq camp. Over the past 7 years, we have been directly observers of international organizations and local authorities operating in the camp. It's a closed environment in which some solutions have been tested. We provide a critical analysis of the camp in 2020, particularly of the barriers to community resilience. Then we look ahead. What could organizations do to support community resilience? In this final section, we bring it all together. We aim at providing you with a toolkit to reflect on community resilience in your context, to help you map pathways that are relevant for you. We provide a list of coping strategies that we have observed in our environment. Each human being and each society is unequal, yet there is much that we can learn from our fellow humans. Inspiration can come from the least prominent voices in the mainstream discourse. Communities like us affected by conflict and crisis. The course ends with a few scenarios to help you with the theory resources. Thank you.
And finally, we have Isra.
Good evening, everyone. I'm Isra, and I'm going to tell you the part of how we make this course. The journey of making this course started a few years ago when InZone, the University of Geneva, organized a workshop on learning design with a specific focus, which is resilience. When we signed up for it, a little did we imagine that we would end up scripting, designing, and creating an entire online course. We were just curious and motivated. How could we have, who had no experience in learning design, been the right fit for this? I'm sure you all have this question in your minds. Well, as Syrian refugees in Jordan, we had to become resilient. You have to rely on something, call it what you will, when the war breaks out in your country and you have to leave. We felt we knew what resilience is. Could we share that with other refugee communities and the rest of the world? That was the question. First, we looked at the theory and noticed a gap. The main frameworks on resilience do not explicitly include our perspective. So we sat down to design a model that stems from our experience. We sketched our framework and on a whiteboard, and then on a simple piece of paper. That's more or less where it all began. The scripting process was lengthy, and we researched the topic, examined the literature in English and Arabic. We worked collectively as an editorial board. Then development began, and for that we went out into the world. We took photos, we set up an interview studio to gather testimonials from fellow Syrian refugees. We involved young Azraq-based artists in creating the illustrations. That's when our close-knit group came together. Finding purpose and unity in this project, we relied on collaborators to voice, and we have found an Azraq-based voice talent voiced the English version of the course. In the early stages, we worked with a larger group, brainstorming and translating ideas from English into Arabic and vice versa. For the case studies, we cast a critical look at our society and traditions. We identified situations where resilience helps to withstand family and social pressure. We wanted to be bold, to talk about things that are relevant to the people around us, no matter what are their ages and backgrounds. Finally, we looked at our environment, which is Azraq. We did not shy away from being honest about the system we live in. We did this for a good reason. Can the system really foster the sort of community that would be better equipped to support refugees? The question is complex. There are no easy answers. For us, making this course has been a journey, and we have learned a lot from it, as much we have put into it. As with all the creative endeavors, now it's up to the users to complete its meaning and to bring it into life. We cannot wait to hear from them. Thank you so much.
I would like to thank the group of authors for doing such a brilliant job of a very difficult task. Now, I'd like to open the floor to questions, comments, anything really. I can see that Isra is with us today. There is also Amran, who's a team member and also an interpreter and translator, so he might help if needed. If you'd like to post your question in the chat box, you're welcome to do so. Really, this is an open space. Thank you, Lana, for your comment. We are really proud of what the guys have done.
I'll ask a related question. So how did your team work with the team within the camp around building capacity in instructional design, in digital learning, kind of course building? So what did that process or journey look like as, as a larger team?
Thank you for your question. It was an extensive process, which started about 3 years ago with an initial workshop that was meant to be an introduction to learning design in a specific context, refugee setting. And a group of Azraq residents signed up for it. And that was really the beginning of a long journey. So we went through the basics of learning design, everything from identifying your topic, scripting your course, all the way to full development. And as we approached this topic, we thought it would be a good idea to focus on one theme that is relevant to people in Azraq. And after all, they are experts in resilience because of what they've gone through. And the reaction was immediately quite positive. They agreed to work on this specific topic to learn how to become learning designers. And then I suppose it all sort of developed from there. We were quite amazed by the amount of commitment and enthusiasm from their end. So we just supported them throughout the design process all the way to the actual resilience project, the online course, which remains a capstone project. But yeah, we think it's a pretty valuable one. Yeah, indeed, feel free to raise your hand if you have any questions for myself or the authors.
Yes, one question. What would you say is the biggest challenge in creating this course?
Thank you, Douglas. Now, I'd like to turn to Isra if she's there for that question.
Yeah. Thank you, Emma. I think the biggest challenge was when we began to think about bringing the right definition of resilience and gather the information and looking for resources to get the right and the correct definitions and information. And I think there is something was about translating the term resilience from English into Arabic, because we thought many times about the right word in Arabic, but finally we decided it. And that was the beginning. And that was a challenge also. And also finding the people who are able and ready for continue in this course. We have many people who started with us, and some of them was forced to to leave us in the middle of creating this course. So we were curious about finishing it, and I think that was the biggest challenge, to keep on till the end.
Great, thank you so much.
Welcome.
Thank you, Isra. Thank you. I can see that Itimad, I hope I'm not mispronouncing your name, has asked a question in the chat box. He says that he's impressed by our effort to customize the course for the camp. Do we think it could be used for another setting? And what about I suppose the more urgent crisis setting? We would love to work on another project with our learning designers based in Azraq. So this is an announcement. Should anyone be interested in working with us on a similar project, we would love to hear from them. I think the amount of expertise that's gathered over time in Azraq is remarkable in terms of learning design, and they have a lot to share still, which can be relevant for a number of contexts. So the answer is yes, we hope there'll be future similar projects. Isra, we have a question for you. What's the Arabic word that you used for resilience?
The translation of the resilience term is المرونة النفسية. المرونة النفسية. Which means in English or in Arabic to know how to be vulnerable and not to be weak when you face something shocked, or not to fall down for any reason, to resist.
Thank you, Isra. Yeah, I should say that the resilience course is now published on our website, on the InZone website. Shortly, we will publish the Arabic version of the course. It has been fully contextualized and translated by the authors themselves, so it will be accessible to an Arabic-speaking audience. Yes, to answer your question, Itimad, yeah, it has been translated. So we have another question. Is the course focused on a specific community, I suppose a refugee community to start with, or is it something that can be relevant to a diverse set of audiences? Again, for this question, I would turn to Azraq because they have pretty clear ideas on this one. Is it just for refugee communities or is it for everyone?
Well, when we think about it at the beginning, we wanted to aim only the refugees. But when we have more ideas and when the course began to get bigger and bigger, we want to defend it for all communities which have the same situations. So it is available for anyone and for any community which want to make use of it.
Thank you, Azraq. I'm just gonna...
Is that okay? Is that enough?
Of
Did
course.
that answer your question?
Of course. I'm gonna read some of the comments to you, just in case you can't see the chat. Lana says, we'd love to see more projects like this in building capacity in learning design to create greater knowledge exchange between communities. Thank you for that. We have incredible work, especially in addressing the language barrier. Could the refugees utilize the learning courses to apply for work in their respective locations? This is Blind asking this question. So again, I would turn to Azraq. And by the way, some of the authors are unable to join us at this moment for work commitments. But I would ask you the question, Azraq, do you feel like you've learned skills that you can use in a professional setting?
Yes, of course, yes. But I want you to repeat me the first question, Emma, because I didn't hear your voice.
Oh yeah, I'm sorry.
For the first part, yes, please.
So Blind says, do you think you could use the skills that you've learned working on this project in your professional life? We know that you are a translator, a freelance translator and interpreter. So those are skill sets that you already have. But do you feel like you've learned skills, new skills that you can apply in a work environment?
Yes, of course. Learn how to be more organized in designing the courses and how to plan for it, how to put the most important ideas or themes or subjects into it. And I learned personally, I learned to be more stronger and to know how to deal with the problems in my life and to learn to teach them to other people. Some of them may ask my advice, and now I know how to aim them and to give them the advice.
That's a great answer. Thank you, Azraq. We have more questions coming in. Sarah, when did you hear the word resilience for the first time? Azraq. I'm curious myself.
I heard it. I heard it when you told us about it. When you told us that we are going to design a course about the resilience. And so I was curious about the word resilience. You saw how much time we spent to think about the right meaning of it. Do you remember that, Emma?
I do, and it's an interesting one, right? because obviously they were familiar, you guys were familiar with the idea. You have to be in your daily life.
Yeah.
But this term kind of came as a new as a new element.
Yes. Yes.
And
I heard it for the first time at the center, to be honest. I know what the meaning of resistance, but I don't know what the meaning of the resilience, which have some of it, of the meaning of on it.
Yeah, of course. And you said that in Arabic an expression exists, but do you use it very often? Is it something that you use regularly or not?
Sometimes, yes.
There's an
We use
interesting
it.
language dimension there.
Yeah.
So we have a lot of questions. Victor, thank you very much for your comment. Victor says, I would love to collaborate with InZone on another project. We will be in touch for sure. Yes, to ensure inclusiveness, we've developed the course in English and Arabic. We would love to be able to translate it in other languages. So we always sort of accept help in that respect for translation projects and contextualization projects. It would be good to, for example, translate it into French. And then we have, a broader question about InZone's mission and objectives for the next 10 years. For that, maybe quickly I could ask Lou to say a couple of words. I just picked the most difficult question of all.
Thank you for that, Emma. The goal of this institution, obviously, is of our program of InZone in a whole, is to offer higher education to people in refugee camps. Now, that's basically what we do, but the goal is to we're basically working under UNHCR numbers. So I'm pretty sure everybody here knows the numbers. I'm just going to bore you with a couple of percentages just to put this into perspective. Around 35% of the world's population's youth has access to higher education. This is world population. When we look at refugee population, that number drops to like 3%. And we simply believe that it's a right for everybody to have access to higher education. Now, the aim of our institution is to offer as much higher education possibilities to those people in those refugee camps, for them to improve their lives and the lives of the people in their community. We aim at specific projects that have short-term high return on investment, let me put it that way. So qualifying certificates, diplomas that help people improve their lives, get jobs, or give them the opportunity to serve as stepping stones towards furthering their academic careers. Ideally, and I know this is utopic, we would like to see no refugees in 10 years, but right, that's okay. That's but as long as there are refugee populations, we will try to offer that possibility for them to empower themselves through education and to better their lives and the lives of their communities. Now, we have a strategy in place, which you can see, actually, which you can read about on our website. But that's a short-term strategy. It goes until 2025, and I wholeheartedly invite you to have a look at it and to give us your feedback, because that's 4 heads are better than 1, 100 heads are better than 5. So that's basically our goal, our aim. I hope that answers your question.
Thank you, Lou. Thank you very much. I can see there are still maybe a couple of questions that we can take. Thank you, Justin, for your comment. You're asking whether we carried out primary research before working on this project. Well, during the early scripting phase, the group looked at the main theoretical frameworks on resilience. You will notice this if you have a look at the course after this session on our website. So the group carried out its own research on the main frameworks to understand what resilience means. Before that, as I said, we identified a gap, if you will. That wasn't at the time much in the way of introduction courses for learning designers in a refugee context. So I suppose we did our own needs assessment, and once we identified that need, we offered this opportunity at our learning center in Azraq, and then it all developed from there. We have another question. I hope that answers it. I'm also mindful of time because we have another part of the session dedicated to the workshop. If you have additional questions, feel free to post them in the chat. We will collect them and make sure to answer each and every one of them. Obviously, if we are unable to do so during the session, please feel free to add your email address and I'll reply, obviously, in a matter of a few days. Douglas asks, if you could work on creating another course, which topic would you choose? Again, Isra, I guess this is a question for you. Which topic would you choose?
I was thinking about designing courses yesterday, and I think something for kids, for in the camps and in the communities, and who are influenced by the war or any crisis, would help them, like making their languages better by learning, teaching them English skills, and finding an interactive way to learn something new, not just English, maybe science or how to deal with the problems in their life, like life skills or something new for them. And also another course, which is for people who don't, who are not able to find the time to study or to be students in colleges or at universities. So finding a way to teach them in an easy way. For example, like I said, some basics in life, that is necessary for everyone to learn, as the languages, and I told you life skills and science, also for the elderly people, not just for the children. I have these ideas in my mind for now.
Thank you very much, Isra. Wow, you have plenty of brilliant ideas. Let's hope we'll find collaborators to work on those potential projects. Thank you. I see Blaine raising his hand. Again, I apologize if I mispronounce your name. Over to you.
No, it's Blaine. Yes, perfect. So, just firstly, I want to thank you all for an amazing job that you guys are doing, especially considering that, there is a lot of potential within refugee sectors, but nobody really, takes the initiative to, harvest that talent. So my question here is regarding for refugee communities that speak a different language to their host countries. So what you see here most of the time, I think, especially Syrians, they speak in Arabic, and hence in Jordan, then they would speak in Arabic. So it would be easier for them, to take certain courses and apply themselves in the workplace. But for other refugees that totally speak a different language in their host countries, how could we, apply an approach or curate or design a course for them to gain the necessary language so that they could also apply it to or make real change in their lives? All right, thank you.
Thank you very much for your comments and your question. Now, the language dimension is very dear to my heart. I am an interpreter and a translator by background. I think there are two potential answers here. One is it is important to increase the budget available for translation and contextualization in general on a range of projects, because it's important that people have access to learning resources in their own language. We don't want to just provide everything in English or in another major sort of widely studied language in the world, because multilingualism is a value. It is an important principle to bear in mind. So one idea would be to simply increase the budget available for translation and in contextualization. And secondly, yes, language learning is important for everybody, I would say, and for refugees communities as well. InZone is aware of this, and we do offer language courses in Azraq and in Kakuma. For the time being, we're focusing on English and French because we are a French-speaking and English-speaking institution. But yes, there's definitely a value in language learning. I would say both tracks can sort of be strengthened at the same time. More budget for translation and contextualization, and more language learning opportunities. I hope that answers your question. Thank you. Nadia says, congratulations to all. Impressive module, thank you. Oh, it was just to say that she's enjoyed the presentation. All right, if there are no more questions for the time being, I guess we can move on to the second part of our session today, which is the actual workshop, so that you can help us find new creative solutions to improve the co-design and co-development process. I'm going to share my screen again. Just a minute. And I would also like to welcome Kaukab, who's just joined us. She's one of the authors of the Resilience course. You saw her contribution earlier. So here we are, the workshop. Your task is to help us answer the question, how can we improve co-production of knowledge and online learning tools? Now, during the development process, the group of authors encountered specific challenges, and we thought that this could be a good starting point for a brainstorming session. So we're going to have 20 minutes to think about the key questions at the top. We have created a Miro board. That's a tool for collaborative working. Special thanks to our collaborators from InZone who set that up. And we're going to divide you in breakout rooms with a maximum of 7 participants. At this point, one last note, it would be good if you can assign a rapporteur, somebody who can wrap things up when we come together in the main room. The outcome of all this is hopefully a list of tangible ideas, tips to improve the way we work with refugee learning designers to create online learning material. But obviously, all comments and suggestions are welcome. At this point, I'd like to ask for help in creating the breakout rooms. I think I can stop sharing my screen now and see if we can actually move on to the
All right.
brainstorming session.
Do you want to share the link to the Miro in the chat?
Thank you very much for reminding me.
Thank you.
There will be a team member from InZone in each of the breakout rooms, so you won't be alone.
All right, opening up all rooms now.
Thank you.
Hello. Do you remember what breakout room you were in?
Hello.
Hello, we're doing some breakout rooms. I'll move you to one of the rooms, okay? Hi, sorry, because I think it's not.
Welcome back. Let's wait for everybody to rejoin the main session. Okay, so first of all, big thank you. Sorry, I was going a bit too fast. I'll wait for another minute or so.
I think now we are all here.
Okay, so thank you very much for taking part in the brainstorming exercise. I was quite impressed by the amount of action that I saw on the Miro board. What we've decided to do as group number one is to volunteer a rapporteur who's kind enough to be willing to share a couple of ideas that we've talked about. So thank you very much, Blind. If that's okay, we're going to start with the first group, and then we'll move on to group number 2 and group number 3. If you have identified a rapporteur, so to speak, or a spokesperson, great. If not, don't worry, we'll find a way. So over to you, Blind, and thank you for being willing to do this.
Okay, all right. Thanks, everyone. So looking at the initial question from our group, we noticed that some of the challenges that your team had, for example, that's regarding to the nature of knowing the tradition or cultures of the refugee community that you're targeting, that you're planning on working. So if we have like an in-depth knowledge about those community refugees, then we could better try understand them, so that we could really create or design a powerful course outlet for those refugees. And of course, if we also looked at other points that's regarding, once these courses are created or designed, how they will be reaching those refugee communities? What's the distribution strategy going to be? Because for some refugee communities, they don't have access to internet or even the other types of communication. So one of the points that was to create a good outreach strategy, maybe identifying community champions that could act as instructors or provide the necessary resources for those refugees. And of course, we also need to consider the wellness of those refugees, and in that sense, creating that safe environment where they are able to easily express themselves and also really show their talent or what they could bring using those different courses. And of course, there were other points such as how we handle when we are exposing, refugee stories. Of course, for some refugees, they would like for that anonymity to be upheld. So for this, we also have to create guidelines and also policies for those faculties or individual organizations that are working with those refugees. So these are some of the ideas from group one. And also my brother Vezena will also be sharing some other points. Thank you.
Okay, thanks, bro. And also thanks everybody for like letting us participate in this kind of groups. So my ideas were like the same as the group Dylan already mentioned. And also like my main concern is like we should concentrate more on the refugees, like giving refugee a voice without exposing them to a potential harm, like giving them like a say in their life, like but you shouldn't post it like expose them like to harm. And also giving them insight of the possibilities they could have like in the future. Like for example, if a refugee just comes out of his country, like he's been threatened or like something else like that, so he doesn't know the possibilities he can achieve in the future. So you should give him some introduction or some insight about that. So that's my point, and thanks everyone.
Thank you very much, Razine and Blind. Great ideas. We've taken note of everything you've said, and thank you for being willing to share them with the others. I would move on to the second group, if anyone is willing to volunteer to share what they've talked about.
I'll take over.
Thank you, Lou.
We actually went. we really brainstormed this on this, and we're very happy to have Azraq in the group as well. One of the things that we definitely talked about is how to I'll get there. Hang on, I just need to find my words again. It's how to overcome the learner situation. And Azra very rightfully so said that a lot of the learners are of a lower education, have lower education, and obviously that's our main target, that's our main audience. So how to really co-work, co-create with a population that has that level of education. So we talked about the necessity to first identify what type of population we are aiming at. And we also looked at ways to do that. So Emma had a great idea, and it linked into what also Victor said. So great team, by the way, those two, like ping pong with the ideas. I like that. They went, Emma talked about using art and visual aids to really co-construct the content. And Victor's idea was, and he rightfully mentioned that most of these communities have an oral history, have an oral way of communicating, and is to take that into consideration. And he suggested to create fiction, to create stories, basically real storytelling, but to create fiction, to really make that link for the learners that they have with their oral communication habits. So it's to co-construct using specifically, instead of creating content and just dropping huge content blocks that people would have to go through, that students would have to go through. It is creating something visually more interesting. There was another one. Yes, Emma also talked about serious games, so gamifying elements to make it less difficult to swallow, because we've all seen e-learning courses. To make it less difficult to swallow, but to have more content that's really on point, and you can gamify almost any content. Another thing that we talked about, and this was Elsa. Thank you very much, Elsa, for your feedback on this one. And she's talking out of experience, and that is to clearly and preemptively define who does what, and to agree that everybody in the working group, that there are clear roles and responsibilities defined and agreed upon by everybody from the get-go. And because that obviously will make it much more easy. Everybody knows what to do. Everybody knows what everybody else is doing. That, and a great point as well, is to basically document everything that the team does, because a working team will change. Team members will come, team members will go. And whenever there's a new team member, the team dynamic changes. So in order to alleviate that is to keep accurate records, minute meetings, notes, to ensure continuity of the actual program and of the progress that is made. So that's what we talked about.
Thank you very much, Lou. We will end up with a very long list of great ideas. I'm really glad to hear it. Before we move on to the third group, just pointing out the fact that at the end of the session, we will ask you to rate 5 solutions so that you can let us know which one would potentially works best. Now, moving on to the third group, do we have a volunteer spokesperson?
Yes, I'll be the volunteer spokesperson, the honorary member who took notes on the Miro, so I'll assume my role.
Thank you, Douglas.
So our discussion at first was centralized on the issue of capacity building with different skills and knowledge. And starting off, of course, our discussion, we had to talk about what barriers and challenges are faced and that needed to be overcome in order to maximize this type of infrastructure that's created. So of course, there's the element of the internet access, but there's also the element of the co-creation, which involves needing to really understand and take specifically into account the actual needs of the beneficiaries and the context of which they are living in and how they think, and not only taking the Western-centric approach. And there's always this element of, where you're working and what's the context. So in terms of a design for a course, that we could have onboarding courses, specialization, and accommodating for the different strengths and weaknesses that the actual beneficiaries have. But what was also interesting is how we can accelerate and scale this is even using the InZone infrastructure and networks that builds to have kind of this intercamp communication and working to be able to share experiences, to share stories, to share knowledge. Let's say either between, like within InZone, between Azraq and Kakuma, but also how to take these ideas and scale them up to interact and engage with migrants or displaced people, or even in the larger global network to create kind of this heterogeneous group of learners worldwide. So that was really the main focus of our discussion. If anyone else from my group would like to add anything, I would not object.
Thank you very much, Douglas. That was very comprehensive. Thank you. Now, before we move on to the final vote, I would ask you, and I'm going to post this in the chat, to please write your name in a circle to choose the color that you would use to vote before you actually do so, so that we will see how the voting unfolds. Perhaps I should share my screen again to show you the Miro board. Would that be a good idea? Yes. Okay, let me do so. You have given us a wealth of ideas and really interesting input, which we're going to, like I said, sum up in a document that I will share with anyone interested in the follow-up to this meeting. And I'm going to start saying right now that you're more than welcome to share your email address in the chat box or to write directly to InZone if you want to receive this document. So let me look at the poll to see how people are voting. This is exciting. Let me make this a little bit bigger. Is this big enough? Okay, I'm going to let you vote in your own time. Obviously, the scale is less practical all the way to more practical. Give you a couple of minutes. Okay, it would seem that you guys have voted. I'll give you another minute because I see movement on the board. A minute, and then we will call out the winners. It's not exactly a race, but we can mention a few good solutions according to most of you. Okay, so I see 5 votes for getting to know the community before developing the project. That makes a lot of sense. Yes. Have a thorough knowledge of the community where the project will grow and develop is absolutely necessary. Then another sort of highly rated one is create a safe environment and community to share ideas. Sensible. Perhaps one where you see potential, potential in general is also give refugees tools and insights about the future possibilities that they're not aware of. And also using art and visuals to construct the content. Yeah, storytelling, I suppose, always helps. That's very interesting. As I said earlier, we're going to collect these findings into one document that we will share with you all. I would throw the debate open for another few minutes if you have final comments or questions at this point. We hope you've enjoyed the exercise just as much as we have. Excellent. So if there are no more comments at this stage, I would really invite you to share your email address with us, either by writing directly to us or simply putting your email address in the chat box. We have taken note of your ideas and your comments and your collaboration ideas, which are always welcome. We're a small team, and we have you now know that we have a small team of learning designers in Azraq who can't wait to work on a new project. We thank you very much for taking part in today's session. It has been great. I've heard from some of the authors who were unable to join us today. They just want to share their thanks and greetings for being with us today. Lou, would you like to say a few words just to wrap this up?
Absolutely. I would just like to thank each and every one of you again for the input and for the great ideas and for the positive feedback. I mean, I'm going to translate it as positive feedback because it's very encouraging. It's very encouraging. We are a small team, and sometimes we do have the impression that we're a little bit rowing up a certain creek without wanting to be too graphic. But it's always great. It's always great to have feedback like this. So thank you very much.
And well, thank you also, Emma, Lou, Ezra, and of course, the rest of the team working with InZone. I particularly enjoyed a lot this session because I think it's, you know, important to have the theory and the practice together. And that's one of the most important goals that we want to translate in the summit, you know, like essentially collaborating and being able to like creating these spaces of collaboration between different experiences and people from different parts of the world. I think also it's very good we had Elsa taking notes, so I'll share that with you, Emma, because I think that creating a document with all these inputs are going to be really useful. And also the mirror board just looks really cute. And so yeah, so and I will also share the email addresses. No worries about that. And I think we can all continue to be in touch. And yeah, also with some closing remarks, I think that answering, how can we improve the co-production of knowledge and online learning tools is a topic that has to be more often put on the table. And we see this, and I particularly see this as something that can break the barrier of refugees and displaced communities accessing to higher education. So congratulations for your work. And I'm excited to see more projects in the upcoming months and years.
Thank you so much. Thank you, Camilla. Thank you, everybody, on behalf of the Geneva, the Azraq team, and on behalf of the authors. I look forward to seeing you at some point in the future.